Hello, everyone, and welcome to another amazing episode of Immigrant Masters Unite, where immigrants unite and transform lives. That's right. This podcast is all about helping you transform your life, your business, and the world around you. And I'm your host, Polish Peter. Now, you may or may not be an immigrant entrepreneur or business owner, but that's perfectly fine. However, on this particular podcast, I really get to talk to, dissect, strategize, and get into the minds of successful immigrants who sometimes came to the United States literally starting from nothing and created a successful, abundant, impactful life for themselves and ended up actually transforming the people around them here in the United States. And on today's podcast, I have such guest. His name is Vladimir Gendelman, and he is from a I'm talking a little bit like I got a little bit of a Russian accent going on there for a second there. He is from a former Soviet Union. Currently, it's Ukraine. And he came here from there in the 90s. And he rarely had any access to basic amenities that many people take for granted, And he came here, he started, working to different things. And after immigrating to America, he made his mission to help provide others with the things he never had access to growing up. That is really cool, man. And so after one of his clients expressed the need for high quality presentation folders, right, for a company, he went and started his own company called Company Folders Incorporated in 2003. And since then, he's been doing this company. And he has over 15 million folders printed so far, over 5,000 different customers. He's acquired wealth of knowledge related to printing, design, business communication, small business management over the past decade. And he actually knows how to grow a company. So I am really excited to have Vladimir here on this call. Vladimir, welcome to the call. Tell us a little bit of your story, how you actually got here.
Wow, that was a grand introduction, Peter. Thank you so much, and thank you for having me on the show. A little bit about my story. As you mentioned, I was born in Soviet Union, in the then Republic of Ukraine. And growing up there, you touched a little bit on having little access to things, particularly choices. With the Soviet Union structure, everybody had basically the same thing. Everything was government owned. Therefore, there was no competition. And since there was no competition, there was no reason to have choices of items or colors and so on and so forth. So you go to your friends' houses and literally pretty much everybody would have one of three different wallpapers, one of few different couches and furniture pieces, and everybody had the same forks and knives and plates and on and on and on. Mm-hmm. There was really no way to stand out. There was really no way to kind of express yourself, as they like to say nowadays. And by the way, you couldn't even color your hair because then everybody thinks you're crazy. And for that, you can get beat up on the street and sometimes killed. Right. So we left Soviet Union and we came here in 1990, in May. And the one thing that really stood out to me was the choices. I mean, forget the wallpapers, forget the furniture pieces. You go to the store, you go to the cheese department.
Right.
And you have more variety of cheese than the whole Soviet Union. They had variety of everything put together, right? And then there are sausages and potato chips and on and on and on. And I really embraced this whole idea of choices and being able to go with whatever you want. So time went on. I had different jobs because when we came here, we didn't really have any money. So, did whatever I had to do. And then I was actually running a very small computer company. I was setting up networks and repairing computers for people. And one of my customers asked me if I can do a company folder because he was looking for something interesting. And he looked around and things that were available were very basic. And I'm like, yeah, that's no problem. So I figured I can do a better job than him just finding stuff. And there really was nothing, nothing that you could really be proud of, I would say. So that gave me an idea that this is it. This is my niche. This is where I can make an impact. And I started a company called Company Folders. Kind of, he referred to it as Company Folders, and that sounded good at the time. And the whole mission of the company is to provide people with choices of die cuts, papers, print methods, and whatever other special customizations that people might be interested in. And we've been doing that for 15 years.
Wow. So listen, I somehow I can relate to your story a little bit, because I mean, I was born in Poland, and when I was born in the 70s and through the 80s, it was a communist country, very similar to what Russian is. And when you talk about choices, I can totally relate to it. And I think this is such an important thing to actually see, because, you know, for you, when you came here, that was a big opportunity that you saw, that because of how you were growing up and what you went through and all that kind of stuff, you saw an opportunity, whereas normally other people who have been living here for a very long time don't really see that, because that's just the norm basically here, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And you look at, and I think that's a huge advantage for immigrants, because when we come here, we see things that normally other people don't see. And that was I think it's a big benefit for you.
Yes, absolutely. I do believe that immigrants have a lot of advantage. And most of it has to do with the fact that A, they didn't have things before, and B, they're willing to work harder than anyone else, just because you kind of have to prove yourself.
Right.
You have to establish yourself. And on top of it, there really isn't much to do when you first come here, because you don't necessarily have a lot of friends or money to actually do stuff. So you just spend all that time working and making things better.
Yeah, exactly. So let me ask you this. The whole thing about choices, right? The topic about choices. And I know you've incorporated it into your company because you provide so many different choices for the clients. Do you still incorporate that into like life or into communication or into how you deal with clients? Does that help you in any way? Do you still have that kind of a mentality?
Yes. So that's actually a very, very good question. When I don't talk to customers as much anymore, but when I do, and the message I give to all of our customer service representatives, we actually call them print project managers. The message is very simple. We're here to help people. Educate, offer, and then if you decide to order from us, we'll be flattered. And we'll do our best to make sure that all of your expectations are met and exceeded. However, I'm also just as happy to help you in however I could. And then if you decide to go elsewhere, that's your call, right? I don't help people because I expect them to buy from me. Now, as the result, because we do put a lot of time into customers and helping them and making sure that they achieve certain things, people come back to us. But it's not a mandatory situation. To follow that same mentality, I offer a lot of very valuable assets on our website, for example. We offer templates for folders, and we make them better than anybody else could and easier to use, just because I think it's important for a designer, and half of our customers are designers and other printers. It's very important to have proper tools to do your job. And if you want to achieve a high quality folder with very interesting and intricate artwork, you got to have a proper template. Otherwise, things might not line up. We offer photographs of different jobs that we felt were really interesting, so that people can draw inspiration from that. We offer blog with amazing posts that are better than anything else out there on the web, responding to a particular question that the post addresses, and on and on and on. It cost me a lot of money to do all of that stuff, but I think it's important for people to be as educated as they could be, because when you make a choice, it's better to make an educated choice rather than non-educated choice.
Right. Now, do you do that same thing within your employees through the company culture, the same mentality? Do you give your customer support people the same kind of
Yes.
I don't know, leeway and all that kind of stuff?
Yes. Our job is to help the customer.
Right.
First
and you know what? And I like that mentality, because I think, so one of the things that, I mean, you guys know that listening to the show is one of the things I do a lot of coaching with clients.
Mm-hmm.
And the companies that come to me, a lot of times, one of the things, for instance, we'll go and look at the website and see like what's on the website. And I see a lot of companies who start off telling everybody how great they are. And basically what it ends up happening a lot of times that they just all about themselves and how great they are and what it is, as opposed to looking like the customer and the client. How's that going to benefit them? Because ultimately when they're coming into whether or not, and that's one of those things about competition, right? They have a lot of different choices, but they're going to come with you because they're looking, okay, how is that going to benefit me? What's in it for me? What's it going to do for me? This relationship. So when you have that mentality as a company and looking at like, we'll educate you, right? And we are there for you. Like, how can we support you? How can we make your life easier or better?
Exactly.
I think that ultimately helps you tremendously as a company.
Exactly.
Right. Awesome. Very cool. So listen, I want to jump to something else because we touched on this before this call. And it was about setting goals. And, especially because it's a new year, as we're recording, and this is January 2019, we're recording this call. So a lot of people are making New Year's resolutions. A lot of people in companies are making new plans and resolutions for the company for the next year or the next quarter or whatever it might be. And as we were talking before this call, you have a different view of how the plan needs to be made in as far as setting goals to actually make sure that you stick with that goal, right? So explain to the listeners your version of how you look at, making these goals work, and should you set goals?
So for some people, goals might be the way. What I found with me personally, when I set goals, it's really hard for me to achieve them because other things come up in a way. So
that never happens, by the way. The things come up.
So in my life, I do something a little different. I have an intent. I have an intent to achieve something. For example, you mentioned that companies set goals and everything else. We have certain usability things on our website that we would like to achieve this year, right?
Okay.
Now, in reality, if it was a goal situation, we would write it all out and we'd have it. By the end of January, we're going to hit this mark, and by the end of February, we're going to hit that mark, and by the end of March, this thing is going to be launched no matter what. In reality, we're very fluid in how we develop things, and we have an intent. An intent is we identified certain usability things on our website that we would like to improve, right? And we said, okay, we're going to work on that. As we work on it, we will uncover either other things that need to be improved as well, or some things that could be easily improved just because we're working on something else.
Okay.
And it might not be as tremendous as the main points, but still might as well take care of because you're kind of working in that area anyways. And that's the difference, right? So we don't have a set time frame for that.
You do or you do not?
We do not.
Okay.
We do not. It's approximate, but anything you do comes down to what? Money, time, and quality, right?
Okay.
Those are three pillars that you have. And it's in a small business, you never have all three. Money is always tight.
Yep.
Time is always non-existent because you need everything yesterday.
All right.
And when it comes to quality, if you don't have time and you don't have money, then quality kind of goes as well. So in our case, quality is the most important thing. And because of that, if we have to stretch it out a little longer or shorter to make sure we achieve it properly, I'm fine with that.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is that, one, you don't really set the goals. There is no deadlines, but you set an intention for an idea to be accomplished.
Correct.
And because of doing that, what it helps you to do is go after that idea, not necessarily taking one specific path, but to be able to kind of course correct as you are going.
Absolutely.
To that intention.
Absolutely. Okay. Everything I do in life, I kind of I start, and then I course correct from there.
Okay. So let me ask you this then, because that is kind of goes against what most people teach when it comes to business, right? For instance,
Correct.
Especially when you have a team. So how are you able to get your team riled up around it to go and hit that intent, especially like there is no deadline?
Well, the fact that there is no deadline, it doesn't mean that we just sit around and do nothing for a long time, right? That just means that we work as hard as we could, and sometimes even harder. And when we come to the point where other things need to be considered, if it improves quality or falls into area that we're working on, most of the times we go and do that. Now, there are certain things that might be time sensitive. For example, if we discovered something that needs to come out by, let's say, a certain holiday, or maybe in time for accountants to start buying folders, right? If we don't get it out in time, we'll miss the whole year of opportunity. Obviously, that becomes a little different.
Right.
And in the smaller projects, things are different because at that point, you got to have a time frame. Otherwise, people will really sit around and not do much, right? If you have 3 weeks for a 3-day project. However, when you talk about the bigger things that could not be defined very well due to the nature of it, right? A lot of companies, a lot of people try and push it through, however it is, just to get it done.
Yep, I've seen that. Yep.
My philosophy is a little different. Let's start on it. In Russia and Soviet Union, they used to say, appetite comes as you eat. And same thing happens here. As you develop things, you come up with other ideas, you come up with other ways to improve it. And I'm all for doing it the right way because, so I also am way more concerned with the long term as opposed to short term.
Right.
Because from my experience, people who do things with short term in mind, they constantly have to redo those things, and they end up spending resources on the same thing over and over again. My grandfather used to say, we are not rich enough to buy cheap things. And I kind of took it to heart on many levels. And when it comes to making decisions, it's long term is the only thing I worry about because it will take longer. I'll get ROI later, but once it's in place, and it's going to be there for a long time. And I don't have to come back to it.
Okay. I'm thinking about this quote that you just mentioned, your grandfather was saying, we're not rich enough to buy cheap things, right?
Right.
So
because
that means digest it.
That means that things will keep on breaking. You'll have to be buying the same thing over and over. Right. And you'll end up spending more money than you would otherwise. And on top of it, it's going to be not pleasant to use. And you will always have problems, which causes you stress. And
yes. Yeah, I see that. And that comes with all kinds of different things in a business, and even for a lot of people in the personal life too, right?
Exactly.
Buying something that's in the cheaper side because it's on the cheaper side, and then it's poorer quality. it's going to break down, whether it's a computer or whether it's,
Exactly.
employees, right? Hiring somebody who's cheaper because they're cheaper and not looking at the quality of that employee or, what they can actually do. And I think a lot of times what happens with companies, excuse me, is that especially when they're in a crunch, they will sacrifice the quality over, say, quantity kind of a thing because of, like, for instance, hiring an employee, right? I've seen so many cases where somebody will just hire the employee because they need to get that employee. And if that employee has not as good of a alignment with the culture of the company or how they're looking at or with their mindset, they'll still hire them because they need somebody. And what ends up happening is a few months later, they're starting to okay, we got to let go of this guy because he's this, who is not being, with our culture, or he's dragging people down and all that kind of stuff. And that's one of those examples I see quite often happen, especially in companies.
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
It's not here.
Right. Because you've said that that's part of your culture, right?
Yes.
What you just described, right? So every single employee that comes in, that comes with that mindset. So let me ask you this, when it comes to, let's say, especially for you, because you guys sell physical products, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to selling physical products, your clients have deadlines, I'm sure, right?
Of course.
Because your culture doesn't align necessarily with your client culture, right? They'll have a deadline. They need to get this thing out for, let's say, like accountants. Now the tax season is coming out and all that kind of stuff. So how do you coordinate that?
Oh, that's good question. And I don't want any misunderstanding here. Quality, jobs getting done on time is extremely important because, accountants aside, a lot of our clients have events and they order these folders for certain events.
Right.
And it's our job to make sure you get your folder for an event.
Exactly.
If it takes 2 weeks to produce a folder, then hopefully that falls in line with your event. And if it doesn't, we're going to rush the job for you. We'll figure out a way to do it a little faster so that you can have it on time. Because if you cannot have it on time, you don't need the product.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that is absolutely different. When it comes to actual production, timing is extremely important.
Okay. So let's go back to that little, I get that part totally, because when you are in this kind of a business, excuse me, hold on a second. When you're in this business where you are supporting other people who have deadlines, then you obviously have to provide it because they're going to go somewhere else kind of thing, right? So let's go back to that setting intentions as opposed to having these kind of typical goals that people set. We talked a little bit about lifestyle and how people, even for the personal goals, right? And you mentioned to me at one point about how the universe can actually align with what you're setting the intention for.
It always does.
So explain that. Talk to me about that.
So there is a thing out there called law of attraction, which is, kind of like law of gravity. It exists. Whether you believe in it or not is a different story. But just like with gravity, if you drop something, it will fall. With law of attraction, whatever you put out into universe, whatever your mind is actively thinking about, whatever you believe you deserve, you actually get. One of the problems is that a lot of people are asking for a wrong thing, and they end up getting the wrong thing, but they always get what they ask for, right? So when it comes to intentions, and also why I like it personally more than goals, is that you don't always have to have it defined very sharply. So for example, when I started the business, for a long time, for many years before I started this company, I had an intention to to impact people's lives, to be able to offer choices. And I had no clue how to do that.
Right.
So the thing that came relatively easy and natural to me was to start the computer repair company, right? Because then I can help people. And back then, we're talking about end of 90s, beginning of 2000s, computers were not as of an everyday thing as they are today. And setting up a wireless network at the time was a real challenge for a lot of people because the whole wireless aspect of things was just not around. Right now, you think about it, everything we do is wireless, and everybody understands it's easy. It's just whatever.
Just there, yeah.
It wasn't like that. So I started that, but because I didn't have a goal to have that kind of company or get it to a certain point by a certain time, my eyes were open. My mind was open. And when, as we talked about, when this customer of mine asked me if I can help him with that, right? I wasn't there to just fix the computer. I was there to help the customer. And through that and through the open mind, I identified that, oh, hold on a second. Maybe this is the direction I should go. And I did.
Right. So here's what I'm hearing, guys. And I think it's a really good example for what you're saying here because of the fact that how we set our goals. And so what happens a lot of times is the goals that we set gives us this narrow focus, right? Because we're just going after that one thing and we're not actually seeing all the possibilities that are around us, just right there in front of our eyes. I always talk to my clients about the fact that, as an example, like if you are driving down the street and let's say you're driving a Ford because that's the car you have, you see Fords all over the place. And then you start thinking, I need to get a new car. And actually those, Cadillacs are really nice,
Mm-hmm. And nobody has it, by the way.
Nobody has them, at that time, And then you start thinking about it and getting a Cadillac. And all of a sudden you see the Cadillacs all over the place. Yeah. And I think it's a perfect example of how our focus, because our mind, our vision, the way we actually look at, can only see certain percentage of what's around us. Same thing goes with our mind. If we put a restriction of what we're looking at and not set an intention, then I think we're going to miss a lot of things. And I think for you, Vladimir, if you had that specific goal of how you were going to help people, and because based on your experiences, based on what you've known, you might have been thinking about, I'm going to help people by giving them choices for giving them 10 different kinds of cheeses because that's what you knew growing up kind of thing, right? But when you set an intention of helping people, then you open yourself up to something like this where now you have this successful company because of that.
Correct. And getting back to your question about the law of attraction, right? And the whole universe helping with it. I had an intention. That was the energy that I was putting out there. And universe aligned things properly to put me in a situation that put me on that path.
Right. Exactly. Right. And here's the thing, couple of things, because I've known about law of attraction for a very long time too. And I believe that what he's saying, I totally agree with that. Couple of things that I want you guys to take on. If you have not had experience with the law of attraction, then you're in for a ride. Okay. Couple of things that exist, whether you realize it or not, it's always there. Yes. And I think once you finally get it, that it's already there, like you mentioned, it's like gravity. It's there. It's just how it is, just a law, right? Then you'll start seeing how you are attracting things into your life. And a lot of times what ends up happening is people talk about what they don't want. And then they're surprised that that's in their life. So one perfect example is for a lot of people would say, well, I don't want to be poor. 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 And guess what?
They end up being poor because universe does not hear don't or not or no.
Right.
Whether you say I want to be poor or I don't want to be poor, from the universe perspective is exactly the same thing. So for
Exactly.
everybody who doesn't want to be poor, the actual thing they should be repeating themselves and expecting is, I want to be that kind of a person. For example, a person who goes on vacation every year or twice a year. I want to be the person who drives Mercedes. I want to be a person that goes to theater every month. I want to be a person that does all these different things. And then eventually you get to be that person because universe will guide you that way.
Right, exactly. And and that's perfect because of the fact that you say what you want as opposed to what you don't want. So that's the first thing that you want to do. Second thing that I'm hearing is that, and this is, I think, harder for a lot of people, is that intention that you set, you believe it, like you expect it. You believe it and you expect it as you already kind of have it.
You have
to expect it. Yeah.
You have to be able to see yourself doing something like that.
Right. So listen, so let me ask you this. For somebody, so you said driving a Mercedes, right? And currently, let's say I'm driving a Ford, and I'm talking about Mercedes, which, it's a pretty expensive car. If I've never done this, how do I actually go and expect it? Like,
oh, it's easy. So first and foremost, you want to identify exactly which Mercedes you want. You want to identify the color of the car, the color of the interior, and the options you will have in that car. The visualization boards are, a lot of people swear by those. So find the picture of that particular Mercedes that you like, cut it out, put it on your wall, look at it every day. Imagine what it would be like to have that car. Imagine what it would be like driving it. See yourself doing it and keep on doing it until you actually will have it. Now, if the mentality is, oh, I really want Mercedes, but it's not going to happen for me, well, chances are it's not going to happen for you. But if you really honestly believe that you can expect that car, by all means, you will have it. And it's not mystical thing. It's not that a magician will come down from the sky, sprinkle some magician's dust on you, and boom, you have a car. No. The moment you put yourself in that frame of mind, you will also start noticing other opportunities that come up that can get you closer to being able to buy a Mercedes. Exactly. Whether it will be different job, maybe it will be some kind of other opportunity. Maybe when somebody recommends a certain book, you will not blow it off anymore, and you'll be like, oh, well, maybe I should read it because now I want something, right? And on and on and on, you start building up on what you already have, and that's how you progress.
Right. So here's what I'm hearing, guys, and this is really cool because I do this with all my clients. Is one of the first things that we do when they come in to work with me is, in the coaching setting, is that I create a vision. We create a vision for their life, and I noticed I didn't say for their business. I've noticed that I said vision for their life, because once you create that vision for their life, it includes all kinds of different aspects of your life, whether it's your personal life, what you want, what you need, what your family life look like, what your spiritual life look like, all kinds of stuff like that. And then we look at the business as well. But what that does, it creates this intention of what you want your life to look like. And then when it comes to, seeing that, you have that in your forefront, and the opportunities that are coming there, which I believe that they were most likely there the whole entire time. You just didn't see them. But now, because you have that intention, you start seeing those opportunities, and you start seeing, okay, which opportunities that are going to take that are get me closer to that intent, And I think it's a really powerful concept. Once you get that, once you grasp that, and then there is a little bit of faith, right? That needs to be in there too.
Absolutely.
Take action on that stuff.
Absolutely. And on top of it, as I'm sure you know, universe wants to give you all these things and keeps on giving them. And just a lot of times as people, we get so entangled in this negativity around us and how we don't deserve anything and on and on. And we actually block the universe from giving things to us.
Right.
And by manifesting, by believing we deserve and will have these things, we just open up to receiving it. We just stop blocking it. That's really all it is.
Right, exactly. So yeah, I like that because I think it's very important. So listen, let me ask you this. Why do you think that people are putting those blocks in front of them that doesn't allow for people? And why would the universe actually want us to have those things? So the reason why I'm asking this is because I think for some people are going to be like, you know what? Yeah, that sounds good. It sounds all great, right? I mean, okay, I open myself up and I, have the intention, opportunities, and I want this, but why would the universe actually want me to get all this stuff?
Okay. So there are a few things here. We are all interconnected, right? All the people, all the plants, the whole earth, the whole universe, we're all part of the same thing. As people, majority of what we consist of is water, right? Mm-hmm. I don't remember exact percentages, 70-some percent, 80-some percent. And over the course, there is a statistics out there that I read some time ago, but over the course of 3 weeks or 4 weeks, whatever it is, our fluids in our body pretty much completely change, right? We get new fluids in and old fluids out. What does that mean? That means that, I don't want to get graphic here, but your fluids come to some people and some other people's fluid come to you and me and everybody else, right? Then the trees out there, the flowers out there, the birds out there, the animals, we all interconnect fluids with them also. And that connects all of us on a metaphysical level with the whole universe. And it's called the law of attraction because it's not that universe is not a being that actually wants or doesn't want something. It just knows that like attracts like. So if that's the signal you're putting out, you're going to get that signal. You're going to get whatever it is you're asking for, right? There is no reason for it. It's just how it is. And there was another part to your question, and I forgot what it was.
No, it's all right. So, I kind of answered that because I think the fact that you just mentioned, the like attracts like, because the original question was why would the universe want me to have this stuff? But I think, you answered a couple of things and
why people block it, you asked.
Yeah, why do they block it? Yeah.
Why do people block it is also a good one. We make decisions based on our previous life experiences, right?
Right.
The interesting part is that a lot of previous life experiences are not even ours. They are passed on to us by parents. And in a lot of those cases, those are not our parents' previous life experiences, but maybe their parents or grandparents. Right. And on. For example, and eventually that comes down to fear. Mm-hmm. So when I was a kid, anytime I was on the bridge or on the balcony, and I come close to the edge, my mom would say, "Oh my God, don't go there. You're going to fall. I can't look at that. Step away," and on and on and on, right? Mm-hmm. I never fell off the bridge or off the balcony. And my mom never fell off the bridge or balcony either. So she actually never had a previous life experience that would make her worry about falling off the bridge or the balcony. But she learned it from her mother, who actually never had an experience like that either. But somewhere down the line, 3, 4, 5 generations ago, the balconies or bridges did not have the fence.
Right.
And people did fall. And that's how somebody learned it back then, and obviously told their kid, don't stand there. And the kid grew up, had their own kid, and don't stand there. And that's how my mom was telling me. And guess what happens now? Completely understanding that there's nothing to worry about. I tell my kids the same thing. Don't stand there.
Right. Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
Yeah.
And
now amplify it over, as you mentioned, being poor and not having money. And what do you tell in a situation where you have no money? What do you tell your child all day long? We don't have the money. We can't afford it. We shouldn't have it. We don't deserve it. That's only for 1%ers. None. What does the child learn? I have no money. I cannot have it. I don't deserve it. It's not for me. It's on and on and on. And then they pass it on to their kids, and that's what they believe. And if they believe that they don't have money and should not have it, guess what? They're going to get that.
Right.
Not having it.
I totally agree. It's basically limiting beliefs that we've set either by somebody else or the experiences or circumstances and all that kind of stuff. And it's one of the things that I do constantly with my clients. One of the first things that we do is we uncover those limiting beliefs and break them to be actually be able to do stuff. Because I believe that every single one of us, like you just mentioned about how we are connected and all that kind of stuff, we all have the resources to get what we want, whether it's internally of what's available to us. We all have the resources. The thing that's stopping us from actually hitting those things, the goals or whatever.
Beliefs.
What's that?
It is the limiting beliefs.
Yeah, it's the limiting beliefs, right? They're stopping us. So that's such an important thing to do. So it's really interesting topic. I mean, we can talk about this for hours, I know, because I've had many conversations like this. I think the topic is really interesting. So when we just put in a summary based on what we talked about. So not necessarily, so there are certain aspects in the business that you set a goal for yourself, right? Especially when you're dealing with other clients.
Of course.
But what we're talking about here is setting these intentions for your life, for overall vision of your company, for that kind of stuff. And what Vladimir is saying here is that you set an intention in such a way that you are seeing what you want your life to look like, what you want your business kind of to look like. But that intention actually allows you to have your eyes open to the possibilities that are out there. And once you do that, and one of the ways to do that is actually create a vision for yourself, for your life, or whatever it might be. And then you start looking, just be open to the possibilities that are coming across you and start seeing, okay, does this opportunity, does this possibility is going to help me get closer to my vision? Because otherwise, if you don't look at it that way, I think you're going to have squirrels all over the place. I always talk about, with my clients, oh, look, squirrel, 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 right? And then you never get anything accomplished. And I think that vision actually helps you get there. And then, with the idea of how the law of attraction actually comes in and helps you to fulfill on that intention. And in order for that to happen, you got to have the intent, you got to have the belief, you got to have the expectations of what you want, and you actually got to ask and look for what you do want as opposed to what you don't want, right? And
exactly.
It's such an important thing. So, Vladimir, I know we're getting at the end of our call here, so I want to respect your time and the listeners' time.
Thank you.
I want to go into my Polish Pillars final round. And my first question for you is, what book would you recommend to listener to take a look at and read?
So in 2018, I came across a book called The Diamond Cutter. The basic premise is white guy from America, I think Utah or Arizona, goes to Nepal, to the Buddhist monk, and he became, I think, the first or the only white guy to achieve this highest level of enlightenment that any white person ever achieved.
Okay.
And then he came back, and after 10 years, 7 years, whatever it took, he came back to New York, and he grew a diamond cutting business from nothing to either 100 or 200 million dollars. And the whole book talks about how how we could influence things that happen around us. And in the middle of the book, he offers 43 or 46 advices or lessons in your life where when things go wrong around you, for example, people don't treat you fairly, or all these bad things always happen to you, or co-workers don't like you, or they don't respect you, or kids, or whatever it might be, right?
Right.
He gives an advice on what you can change internally within yourself that will then affect everything around you. So in other words, if you do take that to heart and practice it, or even partially, right, overall you will become a better being and things around you will improve as well.
Exactly.
From the moment I uncovered the book, I listened to it 3 times.
Okay, very cool. Awesome. Yeah, I'll take a look at the book. Yeah, there's a lot of different books that are similar to that, but I like how they've structured that. So I'll take a look. I'll put that in notes as well. All right, next question. I know you give a lot of different advice here on the show. I mean, about law of attraction, intention, and all that kind of stuff. If you can maybe tie it up into one nice little bow or one piece of advice for the immigrant listener, what would you give him? What would you tell him?
Yeah, that's a good one. I would say to keep the eyes open, keep mind open. And the one thing I always tell people is it doesn't matter what you start with. Start with something. You can always pivot as the time goes on, right? I think the problem for a lot of people is that they cannot start. They have all these great ideas and they always think, well, my idea is not good enough, so I'll just come up with something else. And then years goes by, decades go by, and then they get old and on the deathbed, and they're like, well, I should have done it.
Yes.
No, whatever idea you have, good or bad, doesn't matter. Start. The moment you start, you learn something, you'll see, you'll be able to prove whether it's good or bad, or maybe you can change it somehow, and like in my case, completely go in a different direction altogether. But starting is the most important part.
Exactly. That's a really good piece of advice, because a lot of people, especially with ideas, that sometimes they try to over-evaluate it. Yep. Is it good enough? Is it this? Is it that? And that becomes this paralysis analysis. And, like you said, 5, 10 years later, they still haven't started. So yeah, just go.
And the worst thing is to ask a professional.
Yeah.
Because anytime you ask a professional or specialist, they will tell you exactly why your idea will not work.
That's true.
They will never say it otherwise.
I've had dozens of examples like that of professionals, like with doctors and attorneys and accountants, everybody. So, right. Awesome. Next question. Do you have a quote that you live by or that you want to share?
I have a lot of quotes that I live by, and I would love to share. One of them was from my grandfather. We're not rich enough to buy cheap things.
Yeah.
But the one I would like to mention here is, the quote goes like this: some see mountains, I see steps. Which basically means that any situation that we come to, especially the ones that are more complex, we as people, we tend to see like, oh my God, that's a mountain, I can't approach it, it's too big for me, right?
Right.
But once again, if you go to just starting something, you don't have to see how you're going to climb the whole mountain.
Right.
Just figure out what your first step would be. Get on the first step. The second step will come out of the first one, but you will never know what it is until you go through the first step. And then by the time you're done, you'll be at the top of the mountain without even realizing it.
Exactly. I actually have in my own life, I shared this on the previous podcasts of my own example of climbing a mountain and how I actually climbed it, just looking one step at a time. And when I looked first at the mountain, it was like huge. It was like, oh my God, how am I ever going to get there? Right. But I switched my focus to one step at a time. And before I know it, I was up on the top of the mountain. So that's a perfect quote. All right, next question I have here for you. One thing that you would want to share about the old country that maybe listeners don't know about. Food, custom, saying, anything, a place, whatever it might be. That's the fact that you guys can drink a lot of vodka.
I don't know if that actually is current anymore because obviously lifestyle changed there. Right. But in general, Russians, Ukrainians, people from ex-Soviet Union are extremely, extremely hospitable. When you come to their home, they open up everything. Right. And make you feel extremely, extremely welcome. And it usually is an amazing experience. Very warm, very friendly, respectful.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I mean, I remember too, even like Poland too. When I was growing up, my aunt, every single time somebody would come over, she would open up all kinds of little desserts and tea and all that kind of stuff. It's like a whole spread that we lived there, we were not allowed to touch. It was just for the guests. Did you guys have something like that too?
Yes, we had things that, we will only open when somebody comes over.
That's right. So
because you couldn't just get things, so you wanted your best for your guests.
Exactly. So yeah, I totally agree with that. All right. Next question. I believe that every single person in the world has a superpower. What is your superpower?
What is my superpower? My superpower would be openness to anything and everything. I'm open to universe providing whatever it provides. I'm open to new experiences, good or bad, and that's what I tell my kids all the time. When you try new things, it doesn't matter if it's going to be good or bad, because you will either enjoy it or you're going to learn something. And I'm happy with either or.
Right.
I'm open to clues from around me. I stay very aware of that. And suggestions, advice, and experience shares from others. And I think that openness is my superpower because it allows me to really take in and listen to what's going on around me and then make the best decisions and best thoughts, best intents, and it just goes from there.
Exactly. I like that because of the fact that when you are focusing on that, right, the being open to what's out there, what's possible, what it provides for you, which you're not focused on of what I can do, what I cannot have, or all that kind of stuff. And you're not focused on the fear aspect of it. Why it can't be done. Why can't you go after that, right? And I think that's a pretty big superpower because you can actually step out and do amazing things. And the fact that you're teaching that to your kids, that is awesome because of the fact. How old are your kids, by the way?
8 and 11, almost 11.
All right, very cool. So, I mean, they're setting them up for a great life. And I do the same thing with my kids. You know what I mean? Go and try it and do something. You know, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's just feedback. You didn't fail. It just got some feedback of what
you just learned something.
Yeah, you just learned something. Right. Exactly. All right. Next question that I have for you. If somebody were to reach out to you or wanted to, learn more about you or reach out to your company for whatever might be the reason, or how would they do that?
Well, companyfolders.com. Our phone number is right on top. Feel free to call, ask for me. If you go to the About section, there will be a little bit of a write-up on me with my email address, which is Vladimir@companyfolders.com. I'm very happy to reply and help people out. And yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Vladimir Gendelman. My name is unique, so there really is no other Vladimir Gendelman around. So LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, whatever it is.
All right. Awesome. Very cool. So I'll put it in the show notes if that's okay with you.
Of course.
All right. Awesome. So listen, Vladimir, thank you so much for sharing your life, sharing your successes, your ideas, you shared a couple of the things that you had to work through, especially in the old country. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. So I think that's really helpful and it's going to help them grow and create new opportunities for themselves as far as how they're looking at the life when they come to the United States or whatever it might be, right? The intention, setting the intention. So for you, the listeners, thank you so much for listening on this call. Like I say, like I always do, without you, I wouldn't be able to do this podcast because you guys are the listeners and you guys are providing me with the opportunity to be and reach out to these people to have these kinds of conversation. You are basically helping living my vision. So I really appreciate you doing that. So if you have any questions or you want to be on the podcast or you have ideas for the podcast, head over to mastersunite.com. That's mastersunite.com. And you can contact me on there as well. And I'm on Facebook. You can hit my Immigrant Masters Unite Facebook page and you can like it over there. And we always post cool things on there. And with that said, this is Polish Peter with Immigrant Masters Unite. And I can't wait to see you guys on the next podcast. Thanks, Vladimir.
Thank you for having me, Peter.
You're welcome.